Is this Baroque? Well, some might call it late Baroque, also known as Rococo. So, how can you tell if something's Baroque or Rococo or Neoclassical or even Art Nouveau? In less than 10 minutes, I can have you identifying French design styles like a pro. At the end, I will include a bonus section with some extra vocabulary so you can be the one doing the intimidating. If you take a class on the history of Western architecture and design, they start with Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Then they move on to the Middle Ages and Romanesque and Gothic cathedrals, maybe throw some castles in. The only thing you ought to remember is the three main types of columns. Simple Doric columns, Ionic columns with the scrolled top. I remember it because it looks like the top of a capital I. Ionic, capital I, got it. And Corinthian columns, the fancy word for the fancy column. 2 rows of acanthus leaves and all the fancy scrolls on top. These show up everywhere after the Greeks. After we get through the Middle Ages, we hit the Renaissance, which starts in Italy and spreads throughout Europe. The style that evolves is known as Baroque. Think St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. The source of this inspiration and the why for the sudden growth of this ornate and very costly style requires a lengthy historical and religious discussion. Fascinating, but not going there today. Up until this point, the region known as modern France has followed trends, not really created trends, but that's getting ready to change with a series of kings known as Louis XIV, XV, and XVI. Louis XIV, who reigned from 1643 to 1715, was known as the Sun King and the king responsible for Versailles. During his 72-year reign, Louis XIV took Baroque designs that had previously been found in churches and applied them in his palace, using highly ornate interiors with lavish paintings, statues, marble, carvings, gold, and a play on light and dark that created spaces designed to impress and awe, reinforcing his image of power. Branding like never before. Is anyone not impressed by the Hall of Mirrors? If you think that is just what all palaces look like, that's because all the other rulers copied his look. Louis XV, who reigned from 1715 to 1774, was his great-grandson who inherited the throne when he was only 5 years old. His nickname was the Well-Beloved, for a number of reasons, one of which was because he was popular with the ladies. His 59-year reign saw changes to Baroque, sometimes called late Baroque, but usually known as Rococo, a term that comes from mashing together the words roquet and coquille, French for the rocks in a grotto or cave, and cockle shells. Rococo style includes more curved shapes, including cabriole legs, more delicate designs, ornamentation based on shapes found in nature like leaves, flowers, shells, asymmetry like this C shape, lighter colors, and more playful, comfortable, feminine styles. Louis XV had 2 very famous mistresses, Madame de Pompadour and Madame du Barry. Their very feminine tastes influenced the styles of the period. This piece here may have been a jewel coffer commissioned for Madame du Barry. To keep Baroque and Rococo straight, watch Beauty and the Beast again. The Beast's wing is dark Baroque. Belle's bedroom and the ballroom are light Rococo. Louis XVI, who reigned from 1774 to 1789, was his grandson and was married to Marie Antoinette. His nickname was Louis the Last. We all know what happened to them. By the time Louis XVI came to the throne, design was heavily influenced by the discovery of Pompeii, resulting in neoclassical style with straight legs, fluting, urns, busts, medallions, swags of laurel leaves and ribbons. Although the style had started in the middle of the century, it had not really influenced the court until Marie Antoinette, who loved the latest styles. She thought the palace looked old-fashioned. Be sure to hit the like button. It really helps the channel. Directoire was the period immediately after the French Revolution, 1795 to 1799, and what little style was happening then continued to be neoclassical. The skilled French craftsmen were understandably selling their creations in other countries. By 1804, Napoleon had declared himself emperor, and the new period was called Empire. I know it looks like empire, Empire. And it morphs into a new type of neoclassical. Touches I always notice are the dominance of laurel wreaths, a reminder of Roman emperors, and swans, one of the Empress Josephine's favorite motifs. Since Napoleon's army had invaded Egypt, the neoclassical style now had Egyptian influences and had become more bulky and massive, rather masculine. The end of the Napoleonic Empire in 1815 coincided with the introduction of industrial production of furniture and the rise of a more affluent middle class. France bumped along under Louis XVIII, Charles X, Louis Philippe, and finally Napoleon III and the Second Empire. There were still some fine craftsmen creating beautiful decorative art, but their work has gone largely unrecognized. The French dominance of decorative design had pretty well ended as all Western design was industrialized and became a series of revivals of old styles. You had Gothic revival, Baroque revival, Rococo revival, Neoclassical revival. A bit redundant, but one very interesting thing did happen. The city of Paris, which had been an overgrown medieval village of almost 1 million people, was turned into a modern city between 1853 and 1870, with underground sewers and water pipes, gas lighting, broad tree-lined boulevards, large public parks, and a building code. The new Haussmann apartment buildings were required to be made from stone with wrought iron balconies and mansard roofs, creating the distinctive look we now associate with Paris. The last distinctive touches to Paris were the Eiffel Tower and the addition of the underground metro with its Art Nouveau entrances. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you've probably retained more than you realize. I find it helpful to have a little review by looking at the same category of items and how they changed. For example, this is a Louis XIV armchair or fauteuil. Notice the height at the back, the squareness of the frame, the stretcher under the seat, how the arms extend all the way to the front of the seat. Because it is Baroque, we have heavy carving. This Rococo Louis XV armchair has a more delicate scale with curved cabriole legs and arms that end well before the edge of the seat and swoop toward the front corner of the chair. That made it easier for ladies to sit in their expansive skirts. The chairs no longer needed stretchers and have a decidedly more feminine feel. This neoclassical Louis XVI armchair has retained the delicate scale and shape, but now has straight legs with fluting mimicking classical columns. This Empire armchair has the Empress Josephine's favorite swans, and this one feels Egyptian. What I think is fun to do is to look at chairs that are in transitional phases and see the combination of styles. A very Baroque size married to the curved leg that will become Rococo. And the stretcher's gone. And here's a chair with neoclassical straight legs and a round Rococo back. This series of commodes, what we might call chests of drawers, again shows styles changing. The one on the far left is Rococo Louis XV, with a curved body and the curved cabriole legs. The one on the far right is Neoclassical Louis XVI, with straight body and column-like legs. The one in the middle is a combination of the two styles. It still has the curved cabriole legs, but the chest is very straight and neoclassical. Here is an Empire chest of drawers, visually heavier and more solid looking, with a laurel crown. If you want to have some fun, I will put a link in the description to the website for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's fabulous collection of French furniture. You can test yourself by looking at the pieces and trying to figure out the style. There is a date on each piece, and you can click on the piece if you want to know more about it. There are a number of pieces that are late Louis XIV, where you'll probably see lots of Rococo influences. Nothing I have in my home is fine. It all falls into the category of revival. This chair, Rococo revival. This table, neoclassical revival. In case you're worried about my candelabra, it's not broken, or Baroque, or even French. These pieces were made in Dresden, Germany. Germany had a long-lasting love of Rococo that exceeded that of France and totally took Rococo over the top. Look around your house. You might find more French influence than you thought. You might have noticed that everything I've talked about was Paris and the nobility. What about the rest of France? It's a big country. Everything else is considered provincial. If you have enjoyed this video, hit subscribe and be notified for an upcoming video on regional French design, where regular folk can get loads of design ideas. Now, here are the terms I promised. First, mansard roof, a four-sided roof with dormer windows. Toile de Jouy. Toile is French for fabric. Toile de Jouy is traditionally a French linen made in the town of Jouy with pastoral scenes. Aubusson. Tapestries and rugs made in the town or near the town of Aubusson, starting as early as the 1300s. A Bergère chair. Bergère is a shepherdess. It's an upholstered shepherdess chair. It has an arm that's upholstered all the way to the seat, as opposed to a fauteuil chair, which is an upholstered chair with an open arm. You can see the open space between the armrest and the seat. The cabriole leg, which is the curved leg found in Rococo furniture. A Bombay chest, a chest with a curved body. A commode, simply a chest of drawers, not a toilet. A bureau, which is French for a desk. One of my favorite words that came out of that, a bureaucracy. It's a government of desks. Bureau, a desk. Secretaire, a desk with secret compartments. Acanthus leaves that show up everywhere from the Greeks on. Our Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns. A veneer, which is a thin layer of material, historically a very expensive treatment, considered a cheap treatment now. But veneers fall into three different categories. One is marquetry, a veneer of inlaid materials that create a picture. Or parquetry, a veneer of inlaid materials that create a geometric pattern. The last veneer is a book-matched wood veneer, a veneer of wood applied to create a beautiful mirrored pattern with the grain. Flying buttress. I know it's a Gothic term, but you need this to understand Beauty and the Beast. It's these large stone structures along the side of the cathedral that hold up the heavy stone walls and heavy stone roof while still allowing light to enter the building. Kind of like propping up a fence with a board. Master the vocabulary and you look so clever. Thanks for watching. See you next time.